All right, everyone, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. Please take your seats. It's 1 o'clock and we will continue with our program. For the second half of the conference, the theme after the Taliban takeover, what future awaits Afghanistan, we will be discussing what are the conditions for continued support to women's rights and what may such action look like. For those of you who join us online, I would remind you that you can still ask some questions to the panel and the panelists, and by using the commentary field on Facebook. So we are sending this on our site, the direct streaming, and also on Facebook. So if you want to ask a question, please use commentary field on Facebook. Let me now introduce to you Najwa Alimi, journalist and recipient of the Peranga Prize from 2019. Thank you. You will give us a keynote address. And I'd also like to introduce the interpreter, Waris Saba, and I'll give it all to you.
سلام بر همه.
Greetings to all of you.
در قدم اینو خواست.
In first step,
جهان داخل افغانستان شد.
The international community went to Afghanistan.
و زنان را در مقابل گروه توریستی تابلو کرد.
They give a voice and platform to women in Afghanistan.
و کنار رفت تکنون با سکوت شرمسار نگاه میکنه.
And then they left them alone and watching from a far distance.
این بزرگترین خیانت ممکن در حق زنان افغانستان است.
This is a betrayal when it comes to women's rights in Afghanistan.
به نظر من این سکوت شبیه خشونت طالبان است، اما با رویکرد متفاوت.
I think this silence of the international community is resemblance to Taliban's attitude in a different way.
در کنار این بیایید اعتراف داشته باشیم.
First, let's accept
به شکل بنیادی و آنچنانی که باید در 20 سال کار میشد نشد.
There hasn't been substantial work on behalf of the international community when it comes to women's rights in Afghanistan.
مگر نه به آسانی معامله نمی‌شدیم.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here at this moment.
فیصدی بیشتری پروژه‌ها در افغانستان که به زنان میرفت آنچنانی که باید مصرف میشد نشد.
The programs and projects that were aimed to promote women's rights in Afghanistan, the effectiveness of those projects and programs is under question.
و همچنان ما زنان خودمان مقصر بودیم.
And this, to some extent, is our own fault.
با عدم آگاهی که داشتیم نتونستیم از فرصت به شکل درستش استفاده کنیم.
We didn't utilize the opportunity that we had to the full extent.
اکنون بیاین در مورد وضعیت زنان در چتر طالبان صحبت کنیم.
Now let's talk about women's situation under the current Taliban government.
البته موضوع زنان و طالبان خیلی زمان زیاد لازم داره که البته ما کمش داریم اینجا.
Well, this will take a long time, but I will try my best to talk about it briefly.
بسته شدن وزارت امور زنان و تبدیل آن به وزارت امر بالمعروف.
The closure of the Women Affairs Ministry in Afghanistan and replacing it with the Ministry of Vice and Virtue.
آن هم در هفته‌های نخست حکومت طالبان.
During the first weeks of the Taliban government.
نشان دهنده یا آشکار ذهنیت طالبان در مقابل زنان افغانستان است.
This shows the attitude and the mindset of the Taliban towards women in Afghanistan.
در کنار ارزش‌های دموکراتی صدها نهاد مرتبط به زنان اکنون بسته هستند.
There were hundreds of institutions, organizations, NGOs that were working for protection of women's rights and promoting women's rights in Afghanistan. Now they're closed.
زنان از کار، تحصیل، فعالیت‌های اجتماعی، فرهنگی و ورزشی عقب ماندند.
Women are forgotten when it comes to their rights, education rights, and all other sorts of rights. They have been totally forgotten.
و صدها زنان فرار کردند.
And hundreds of women escaped.
و اکنون صدها زن دیگر در چهاردیواری خانه اسیر هستند.
And hundreds of them they're living under fear at their homes.
و همچنان روانی.
And of course, this has affected them psychologically.
نزدیک به 3 میلیون میشه که مکتب در افغانستان یا بخش تحصیلی در افغانستان فلج است.
Education, higher education, primary education, it's totally paralyzed right now when it comes to women higher education and primary education.
در همین هفته گذشته یک تعداد مکاتب در ولایت ایراد باز شد.
During the past weeks, some of the schools in Herat province reopened.
اما باورتان میشن معلمان با اختیار خودشان مکاتب باز کردن.
It was due to pressure and protest from the teachers in Herat that resulted in opening of those schools.
و طالبان کلا شانه خالی کردن و گفتن ما نمیتونیم امنیت مکاتب و دخترها را بگیریم.
And the Taliban told them that we do not guarantee your safety.
از دیدگاه من طالبان تغییر نکردند.
And from my opinion, the Taliban haven't changed at all.
اما گروه افراطی هستند که با باورهای مذهبیشان هزاران جنایت بشری را انجام دادند.
There are still those radical terrorist group that has committed atrocities and violence.
اما طالبان باید مطمئن باشند که افغانستان بدون زنان نمیتونه ثبات داشته باشه.
But they need to understand one thing, that Afghanistan will never have substantial development without women.
حذف زنان از جامعه قیمت گزافه داره.
Ignoring women when it comes to policy making, it has a high price.
افزایش خشونت برای اطفال.
It also affects and results in violence against children.
مشکلات در اقتصاد.
Of course, it affects the economy.
جامعه بخش‌های مختلف در جامعه فلج شدن و اکنون خلا وجود داره.
And there is a vacuum, there is a gap that needs to be filled, and that gap is there because they ignore women.
و اکنون میخوام در مورد اینکه چه راهی حل میتونه داشته باشیم صحبت کنم.
And now I would like to talk about solutions, possible solutions.
میخوام این اشاره کنم که وقت این مثال گذشته یا تجربه گذشته ما باید مد نظر داشته باشیم.
First of all, we need to keep into consideration the experiences that we have from the past.
آنچنان گفتم پروژه ها در موقعیت مشخصش مصرف نشدند.
As I said, certain projects and programs that were aimed to protect and promote women's rights, they were not effective.
و همچنان منابعی که باید استفاده میکردن منابع درست و قابل اعتبار نبودن.
And those institutions that were implementing those projects and programs, they were not, they didn't do their job effectively either.
با در نظر داشت این دو مورد
Keeping these two things into consideration,
باید این بار جهان تجربه بگیره که از چه آدرسی میخواد در افغانستان کار کنه.
the international community should learn from those experiences and be more cautious and effective implementing such projects and programs.
قسمی که گفتم گروه طالبان قابل اعتماد نیست، نمیشه به طالبان اعتماد کرد و به اونا پول داد که در بخش زنان کار کنند.
The international community should never trust Taliban with these projects and programs and should not give them any kind of assistance, whether humanitarian or development.
به نظر من این کار شبیه است که یخ بخوایم در مقابل آفتاب بمانیم.
And this is if the international community proceeds with this, it will have huge consequences.
و همچنان یک نقطه دیگر.
One further point.
خیلی از خانمایی که قبلا در حکومت در مافیا نقش داشتند
A lot of women that were active and advocates, so-called advocates of women's rights in Afghanistan,
حالا در کشورهای مختلف رفتن میخوان قهرمانسازی کنن و از افغانستان نمایندگی کنن.
they have fled to different countries and now they think of themselves champions of women's rights.
زنانی که با حضورشان ما معامله شدیم.
And they are also to be blamed for the current situation.
منظورم از این مثال ای بود که
Why I'm giving this example is due to
یعنی همچون منابعی که با در نظر داشته گذاشته
this was a mistake of the international community to trust those people.
برای زنان میخواستن کار کنن مد نظر بگیرن که این بار از چه روشی داخل میشوند.
So they shouldn't repeat the same mistake, the mistake of the past, when they're thinking about future projects and programs directed at promotion and protection of women's rights in Afghanistan.
در نظر گرفتن دو مورد، یکی محتوای موضوعی که یا فعالیتایی که میخوان در بخش زنان در افغانستان انجام بدن.
If the international community in the future decides to help and protect, promote women's rights in Afghanistan,
و یکی از چه منبعی میخوان داخل شوند.
and from what sources they protect the women's rights.
خیلی اهمیت داره به اینکه واقعا بتونن آنچه که میخوان انجام بدن به شکلی پایدار باشه.
They should they should think more for the long-term and sustainable solutions, not just short-term projects and programs.
چیزی که حالا زنان افغانستان واقعا نیاز دارن.
At the moment, what women in Afghanistan really need is
من قبلا خیلی خلاصه اشاره کردم که وضعیت زنان افغانستان در چه شرایطی است.
I referred to it earlier in my speech, the condition and the situation of Afghan women.
در قدم نخست افاظت تمام زنایی که اونا فعال بودن.
The international community, it's a duty and responsibility of the international community to protect those women who were active in promotion of women's rights.
باید تمام او زنان از افغانستان بیرون کشیده شوند.
They should all be evacuated and protected.
امروز در مسیر راه خواندم که امریکا می‌خواهد که در بخش قاضی‌ها برای خانم‌های افغانستان مدال بده یا جایزه بده.
When I was coming to this conference today, on my way, I just read the news that the United States will give medals of some kind of medals for the judges of Afghanistan.
این برای ما خنده‌دار است. جایزه ندین، واقعا کار کنین، اونا را از شرایط ناامن نجات بدین.
It's an irony, and they don't need medals. They need protection. Not only those women who are there in the U.S., but those who are left behind in Afghanistan.
شما در مقابل اونا مسئول هستین.
The international community has a duty and responsibility when it comes to protection of those women.
و هیچ توجیهی نمیتونه که قناعت بخش باشه.
And what is happening at the moment is not enough.
مورد دوم.
Second point.
کسایی که در افغانستان می باشه باید متوجه باشیم.
Those who are in Afghanistan, those who are left in Afghanistan, we should be cautious.
یعنی ذهنیت هایی که در اونجا در حال تغییر بودن یا تغییر کرده بودند.
During these 20 years of the presence of the international community, the youth, their mindset have changed.
اونا رو نباید از دست بدیم.
We should be cautious that they don't turn in the opposite direction.
با ساخت یا اعمار برنامه‌های آموزشی یا مکان‌های آموزشی باید او ذهن‌ها را در یک مکان یا در یک موقع جمع کنیم.
And how can we protect those bright minds is with a certain kind of movements, with capacity building trainings, with awareness trainings, and further educational programs.
کسایی که در حال تغییر بودن شبیه فضای همینجا باید اونا را در یک موقعیت جمع کنیم که ذهنشان با گذشته در ارتباط باشه.
And they should stay connected with what they have learned during those 20 years.
و او ذهن‌ها را باید رشد بدیم، تقویه بدیم که اونا ذهنی تروریستی و طالبانی به بار نیایند.
And we should make sure that they don't get radicalized under the Taliban regime.
و جهان باید متوجه تمام فکری ازی باشه که
And the international community should take into consideration that
و همچنان نگران هم باشه
and also worry at the same time
از اطفالی که واقعا با ذهنیت تروریستی طالبانی به بار میآیند.
Those children and youth that are being radicalized under Taliban regime in different schools and madrasas.
و نباید موضوع مشروعیت دادن به طالبان هم از پیشون بمانه.
And another thing is the recognition of and giving legitimacy to the Taliban government.
قسمی که گفتم طالبان قابل اعتماد نیست و نباید به اونا مشروعیت داده شود.
As I said, Taliban cannot be trusted, and the international community should never recognize them and give them legitimacy.
ما نمیخوایم تاریخ ایران تجربه داشته باشیم.
And we don't want to repeat the history of Iran.
و عامیان بین المللی که البته امنان میدهند و حمایت میکنند باید اینو متوجه باشن که
And the international community and institutions that are supporting Afghanistan in one way or another should keep into consideration that
زنان افغان پاداش گروه‌های تروریستی نیستند.
The women in Afghanistan should not be the collateral damage of this whole mess in Afghanistan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now invite two more guests. We have Jamila Afghani, President of the Afghan section of the International Women's League for Peace and Freedom. Welcome very much. And we have Aminulhaq Mayel, Acting Director, Program Director, and Deputy Country Director for the SCA in Afghanistan, in Kabul. Welcome to you as well. And Najwa, you will stay for the discussion. Yes. First of all, I would like the two panelists that just came in, I would like you, if you would like to comment on Najwa's address. Jamila, would you like to start with a comment, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving me the space to be with you today. Although I was planning to be physically there, but due to asylum seeker process, I was not having my travel document to be there physically. And I'm glad that Ms. Najwa presented us there. Whatever is the situation in Afghanistan about women's rights, that is totally clear for everybody. Everybody knows. And I really don't want to repeat what Ms. Najwa already mentioned. But I really want to see and say, when I was watching the first panel, two panel today in the morning, and I was hearing about from the friends about the plan 2 or plan B regarding Afghanistan, so it was struck in my mind. And I really wanted to share with you here that we Afghan women had the plan B. We were thinking that such a situation might come when Taliban were officially recognized by USA by signing an agreement with them on February 2020. When I met personally Taliban in 2019 summer, during the intra-Afghan dialogue, I found that Taliban politically are changed, but their perception about women's rights are not changed. And the very quick handover of cities and provinces to Taliban was giving us the sense that the storm is coming. And we were asking the international community, we were conducting lots of advocacy, but nobody listened to us. Nobody listened to us. And everybody was saying that Afghan women should stay inside Afghanistan to continue the gains that we had. And today, now, they have lots of announcements about protection of women, but as Najwa said, there is lack of protection inside and outside Afghanistan, and we Afghan women are facing.
Right, thank you. And Aminulhaq, do you want to make a comment as well on Najwa's speech?
Thank you so much. First of all, let me offer my greetings to Ms. Najwa, to Ms. Jamila, to you and the respected audience. I agree with Ms. Najwa's point of views in many ways. However, in terms of the changes in Afghanistan, change of Taliban, I fully agree that Taliban may have not changed, but the Afghan people have changed, the women have changed, the girls have changed. Like you are seeing me in a Western dress right now. After an hour, I will go home. I will drive my 2010 model white Land Cruiser, crossing several Taliban's checkpoints and go home. You believe me, in 1996, during the first term of Taliban regime, if they saw someone with a clean dress, they would have stopped him or her and they would have insulted. But now it's not that situation. It doesn't mean the Taliban have changed. It means the people, the context of Afghanistan have changed. It means that there is room for working in this country, still for defending the rights of women, rights of girls, and human rights in this country. However, we need to note that This Afghanistan is an Islamic country with 99% Muslims. And out of the whole population, 75%, 70 up to 75% live in rural areas with very traditional beliefs and practices. It means that, you know, in all the world, the state has to make the legislations, the laws, in accordance or based on the culture of the nation or the society that they are governing. The same as Taliban. They are considering the cultural as well as the traditional interpretation of Islam that they have. Here we have the problem. Here we have the real problem. There is need to stand against Taliban, to tell them that whatever you interpret from Islam, that is not true. Islam is very clear in its orders regarding the rights of women, human rights of girls, education, health, whatever. But that is the wrong interpretation, as well as mixing up the culture of Afghanistan with Islam. That's the main problems that need to be corrected.
Right.
The second point, just 1 minute.
Right.
The second point that I'm raising is that unlike that international community and we are facing with the reality of Taliban. Taliban are also facing with the reality of the achievements that Afghanistan has made over the past 20 years. Maybe some of those achievements are somehow lost, but still there are lots of achievements that we have and we can defend and we can work with. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to stick there a little bit with what you said about traditions and culture and the Taliban and the people of Afghanistan, many of them living in very traditional and cultural rural areas. And what role does that play when we're talking about women's rights and women's progress? What role does the tradition and culture play? Is that hampering these rights and these the progress of women? Jamila, would you maybe take up on that note?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Jamila.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with Mr. Mayel that Taliban are at the moment taking over Afghanistan, not only Kabul, and around 60% or more than 60% of population are residing in very remote areas where culture and custom has very upper hand. And even the issue of banning schools on the girls, it's coming because of the cultural mindset. Like the city or province of Herat, which is much more moderated, and there were lots of investment by international community. And earlier, Najwa also pointed to that women could make Taliban to change their strategy on that level. On many other areas, we are facing the same difficulty. What to do? I think there is very much a need of women scholars, women activists that have the knowledge of Islam to come to raise their voice and present a second narrative, a moderate narrative of Islamic rights on Islamic Sharia interpretation about women's rights. And since 2019, when I met Taliban, I came back to Afghanistan. I have started this initiative. Besides, previously 6,000 imams were trained by me, and now we are working with a group of women scholars. And recently we had 2 press conferences where women scholars raised their voice about their right of employment and right of education. And that program got a lot of coverage, media coverage, nationally and internationally. And I was expecting that Taliban may come and close the door of our organization. But they were silent. They were listening. So at least at the stage, if they are listening and they are not taking any reaction to that, so we can see that there is a room, there is a tiny room that we can go through this room and bring positive change in the mindset of Taliban, hopefully to change their policies or their mindset. And of course, it will be very difficult for Taliban foot soldiers, as political leaders are up to some extent they are changed, but it will be very difficult to work with the foot soldiers who are coming from very tribal community.
Right. Najwa, would you like to talk a little bit about the culture and tradition and what role it plays when it comes to women's rights and the progress of women in society?
نجوا میتونین شما ببخشید صحبت کنین درباره رول کلتور در وقت رول کلتور فعلا کلتور چی رول میتونه داشته باشه در حق دخترها و زنان در افغانستان؟
من یک موارد خیلی خلاصه‌ای در موردی که با آمدن طالبان چی شرایط برای زنان افغانستان پیش آمده را در حرفای قبلیم گفتم.
Briefly, as I pointed during my speech, that how has the Taliban affected the women's rights in Afghanistan?
قبلا درست است که آنچنانی که باید کار میشد نشد.
Yes, during those 2 years of the presence of the international community, yes, there were some progress, but it wasn't satisfactory.
اما نمیتونیم فیصدی همه رو بگیم که نه نتیجه مثبت نداده.
And we cannot say that everything was ineffective. There were some positive, there was some progress and positive things.
ما در حال تغییر بودیم.
We were changing. We were in the process of change.
به شدت جوانان در حال آماده شدن یا هماهنگی با جهان بودن.
We had contact, women, youth, they had contact with the international community.
نمیخوام اینجا خیلی بحث کنم که چی داشتیم و در چه شرایطی که بودیم ما زندگی میکردیم.
I don't want to emphasize too much on what we had and what were the conditions.
بله چالش داشتیم، مشکلات بود، اما آنچه که تلاش میکردیم نتیجه میداد.
Yes, there were challenges, but we were happy and satisfied and content with a certain level of progress.
نتیجهش اگرچه اندک بود اما ما برش خوشحال بودیم، بازم ادامه میدادیم.
And we would continue with that struggle.
اما حالا تغییر فرهنگ.
And now there is a total change when it comes to culture.
بله افغانستان یک کشور اسلامی است.
Yes, Afghanistan is an Islamic state.
اما طالبان اونا حکم اسلام ندارن.
But they don't have the monopoly when it comes to the interpretation of Sharia or Islam.
اونا مریضای روانی هستند.
They are psychopaths.
و اونا از اسلام صحبت نمی کنند.
And they don't speak based on the true Sharia and Islamic laws.
با حضور اونا اسلام در جهان وحشت زده شده.
Islam, they have sabotaged the whole Sharia in Islam.
حضور طالبان رشد باورهای زن ستیزانه در افغانستان است.
The presence of the Taliban means their presence is is misogynistic and it will intensify misogynistic views.
وقتی ما از باورهای زن ستیزانه صحبت میکنیم
And when we speak of misogyny,
یعنی در مورد پوشش، فعالیت، فرهنگ، اجتماع، هنر همه بخش هاست.
it encompasses everything, education, all other social services in broad.
2 هفته قبل یک دختر 9 ساله با مرد 55 ساله در بدل پول فروخته شد برای ازدواج.
2 weeks ago, a child, 15 years old, was sold to a 55 years old man in return for small amount of money.
Right. That's a very grim story. That's a very grim ending. And maybe we should talk about what we can do together, and civil society and the international community can do together to advance the position of women and keep fighting for women's and girls' rights. What maneuver, you were touching on it briefly, Jamila, the maneuver for civil society and freestanding organization, NGOs, do we actually have to advance women's positions? Aminulhaq, would you like to start this time, perhaps? Are you with us still from Kabul? Yes.
Thank you very much. As I already indicated, there are rooms. I'm sorry, but the electricity is cut off, so my face becomes dark.
But we can still hear you.
Yes. It will come back after a few minutes. As I already indicated, that there are rooms for working in this context, in the current context in Afghanistan. Of course, with the limitations, of course, coupled with the restrictions. What I see as the role of civil society in Afghanistan that they can play in this context is that first, they need to reorganize first themselves. Unfortunately, by the political change, the civil society in Afghanistan, they are very disrupted and even broken. The structure is somehow broken. Every civil society activist or civil activist is just trying to escape the country, just trying to find a way out of this country. This will take some time that they reorganize themselves. Secondly, the international or the global concepts, that is human rights, gender, women's rights, girls' rights, and etc., is the rule of civil society to contextualize these concepts. For instance, in terms of using repeatedly the term gender or human rights, it's better for them to talk more rights of education, rights of health, rights of women for health services, for education, for business, for employment, for media, and all the rights that they have. And particularly, they need to approach the Islamic scholars. They can play a very strong role in influencing Taliban, in convincing Taliban. I totally agree that some of Taliban who have been in Doha, they have changed. They have a different and a little bit open-minded mindset. But majority of them fighting over the 20 years, still they are very sensitive against these concepts. So this is the role of the civil society, to use the scholars, Islamic scholars, to convince Taliban and to let them know that whatever they interpret from Islam with respect to the rights of women is not true. At the same time, the international community has their responsibility to approach the international Islamic institutions. Through them, they can influence Taliban. That we saw the examples, like the foreign minister of Doha had a very clear speech. Some scholars from Azhar University, they had very clear speeches, messages to Taliban. So I see also a role for international community to keep up the women's rights in the international platforms and approach those institutions. Sorry for talking too much.
Jamila, I would like to hear your opinion on this. What maneuver does the civil society have at this point in time?
Yeah, actually, sometimes it seems very ironically that we all have so much expectation from a war machine, which is called Taliban. And now they have taken, and now they have to go from transition of a warring strategy to governing strategy. We all have so much expectation from them, but we forget the other actors which can play very important role about what they should do. I think everybody is talking on international level about women, peace and security agenda, about 1325, but we are forgetting that what we have to do, we are expecting from Taliban, but we are forgetting our role. At the have some of Afghan women are outside Afghanistan, like me, Najwa, and many others. But reality on the ground is different. 36 million people are residing in Afghanistan, and half of that populations are women of Afghanistan, that they have to live under that regime and they have to work. And international community, by draining their funding on Afghanistan, draining the funding on development and humanitarian issues, they are playing very major role on making more obstacle on Afghan women. For example, the current sanctions on Taliban, what has changed in Taliban with that sanctions? But you can see how much it has changed the life of a common person there. When we are talking about humanity, humanitarian laws and human rights, if a person has no food and they are obliged to sell their children for the survival of rest of their family, is it this human right that we believe we advocate for that? This is the gender equality that we are talking for that? No. First of all, we have to take action on ourselves, on our own side, considering the reality on the ground. I'm not saying this because to recognize Taliban. No, this is not my demand. I'm not pro-Taliban, but I'm asking international community to find trustworthy, proper mechanism to carry the flow of funds in Afghanistan in order to prevent the chaotic or the humanitarian crisis, which is daily is increasing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Najwa, if you're looking at the international community, what action would you like them to take, but also not only actions from the outside, but how can they work together with organizations inside Afghanistan?
نجوى نگرانی‌های اصلی شما در مورد حقوق زنان در افغانستان چی است؟ جامعه بین‌المللی و جامعه مدنی چی فضای برای فعالیت دارند؟
موجودیت یا ادامه طالبان به نظر من
The presence and the presence and also staying in power of the Taliban government, in my opinion, is
قسمی که قبلا گفتم رشد باورهای زن ستیزان است.
It further promotes the misogynistic views.
طالب که جنس مرا به رسمیت بشناسه یا بپذیره
The Taliban, if they recognize me as an opposite sex and woman, my rights as an opposite sex and woman and gender,
او دیگه گروه توریستی گفته نمیشه.
then they will not be, if they do that, then they will not be regarded as a terrorist group.
فقط با همین خواستم خلاصه نگرانی خود بگویم.
I just want to conclude with this point.
والا بحث جهان.
And now the discussion of the international community.
من فکر میکنم خیلی با آسانی که کابل معامله شد.
In my opinion, the deal of the Kabul out of the Doha agreement with the Taliban.
و خیلی آسانی میتونن که طالبان پس بزنن.
It was so easy, that deal, and I think the fall of Taliban will also be a similar situation. So they came into power easily, and then they will lose power also easily.
در ظرف 5 دقیقه کابل همه افغانستان معامله شد.
And just in the matter of 5 minutes, they took over almost all Afghanistan.
و حالا چه بانه‌ای میگیریم به خاطر بیرون کردن طالبان؟ و حالا چه بانه‌ای میگیریم به خاطر بیرون کردن طالبان؟
And now it's possible that they lose that power because they came into power so easily, and it's possible that they lose that power.
باید اشاره کنم که گفتگوهای صلح از همون ابتدا در مورد زنان مشکل داشت.
I want to point out that those points when it comes to protection of women's rights, it started when we initiated dialogue with the Taliban.
و ما زنان به خاطر آمدن طالبان در کابل معامله شدیم.
And women, of course, they became the collateral damage out of those deals that initiated with the Taliban.
و نادیده گرفته شدیم.
And we were totally ignored when it came to dialogue and negotiations with the Taliban.
و حالا باید جان ایره بفهمه که
And now the international community needs to realize this, that
این بار به دلیل فقر
due to poverty,
به دلیل بازیای سیاسی
political games,
نباید پس دوباره زنها رو معامله کنن.
the women shouldn't, women rights shouldn't be dealt with or treated as collateral damage in the negotiations with the Taliban.
چرا باید جنس من معامله شوه؟
Why should my right as a woman and human be a collateral damage in those dealings?
برای همین پس تکرار میکنم.
So I want to reiterate that
نیادهای عامی که هم غذا میتن و هم حمایت میکنن
those organizations that provide assistance, whether development or humanitarian assistance,
شما میتونید خیلی راحت پس دوباره بتونید که کابل با آسانی از طالبا بگیرین.
you have the power and ability to take Kabul back from Taliban.
طالبان نه قدرت دارن، نه سواد دارن و نه شعور.
They have no power, they don't have, they're illiterate, they're uneducated, and they're not widely accepted by the people of Afghanistan.
Right, thank you. Do we have any questions from the floor? Anyone who would like to raise a question to a panelist? Otherwise, I do have a last question. And I would like to ask, you were talking, Najwa, in the beginning, you were talking about long-term solutions. And I would like to ask all three of you, we don't have much time left, so you will have 1 minute each to give us your long-term solutions when it comes to women's advancement, girls' rights, women's rights in Afghanistan. If we want to make this happen sustainably and in the long run, how are we going to do it? Do you start, Najwa?
یک نگاه اگر با آینده کنیم نجوا چگونه جامعه بین‌المللی و جامعه مدنی در افغانستان میتواند حمایت از مبارزه برای حقوق زنان با یکدیگر همکاری کنند؟
Short and sweet.
اوکی. موضوع خیلی بزرگ است اما زمان کم.
It's a very broad question, needs a lot of, but I will try my best to shorten it. Yeah.
البته باید بگم این خیلی از مسئولیت من بالاست.
This actually is not in my power or in power of one or two women.
که در مورد آینده دور زنان افغانستان صحبت کنم.
So that I discuss and talk about the future of Afghan women.
بازی سیاسی افغانستان هر دقیقه در حال تغییر است و غیر قابل پیش بینی.
The political situation in Afghanistan is volatile and is unpredictable.
اما این بار به نظر من جامعه جهانی میتونن که
But this time the international community has the ability to
و همچنان امکانات چه دارن
and they have the power
در بخش زنان ظرفیت سازی کنن.
to build capacities when it comes to women related projects and programs.
وقتی از ظرفیت سازی صحبت میکنیم
And when we talk about capacity building,
من به حیث یک زن
I as a woman, Afghan woman,
باید حق انسانی من بفهمم بعد ادعا بر حقوق زن داشته باشم.
first I need to understand my basic human right and then can I talk about women right.
یعنی کارای بنیادی شوه که
There's a need for substantial
زنان
project
از نگاه ذهنی باید تغییر کنن.
The program should aim to change the mindset
خودشان باید پیدا کنند.
of women and they need to realize their basic human right and then their right as a woman.
خلاصه برنامه‌های آموزشی، آگاهی، هنری، فرهنگی، اجتماعی.
And all the programs, educational programs related to social programs and women rights program, human rights program.
به تمام مواردی که بتونه زنان را از با درونشان آشنا کنه.
There should be investment from the international community in such projects and programs so that they realize their basic human rights and women rights.
Right. And Aminulhaq, do you want to give your advice for long-term solutions, please?
Thank you very much. Just a few short points. First, we expect the international community to not give away. I mean, they should not give up. First. Secondly, it's realized that currently Afghanistan is suffering disasters, and the humanitarian aid is getting prioritized for the international community. But they shouldn't forget the women and human rights in Afghanistan. Coupled with the humanitarian assistance, they should continue their support for development programs, development long-term programs in Afghanistan. Third, the international community should keep up their pressure on Taliban, not through the ways that the people of Afghanistan should suffer. There are many other ways that they can pressurize Taliban without affecting negatively the Afghan population. So these are the 3 points that I'm suggesting for international community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Jamila, you get the last word. You're muted.
Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Mayel said most of the point I wanted to say, but the only last word will be put your words into action. This is my call on international community, and also to Taliban, and also to each and every human being who says beautiful words. Please practice it.
Thank you.
We want to see practically. Thank you.
I think that's a very, very good ending on this session. Thank you very much for joining us online, and thank you for joining us here in Stockholm. And we have one for you, Najwa. Thank you so much for coming. One for you, Waris. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. We will have a small break just to stretch your legs if you want to fill up your coffee cups or water bottles. They're all there. And I will see you back here again at 2 o'clock.